morning. My name is Jim Bout. I'm the Senior Vice Commander of this post. Our Commander, Ken Hansel, cannot be present this morning, but is honored to have you here. I would like to welcome all of you from the Montville Township High School media class to the VFW Post 5481. This Veterans Post is composed of approximately 90 combat veterans. Combat veterans are those members of the United States Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, and even Merchant Marines that served during a time of war on foreign soil. This post building was once a farmhouse for the Cisco family. The entire community park and even the high school was part of a dairy farm about 60 years ago. I would like to introduce you to two of our World War II veterans, Gerry Gemian.
Good morning, boys and girls.
Good morning, Gerry.
And Tom Jones. Gerry was an Army radioman in the Pacific Islands fighting the Japanese Army and Navy. Tom also served in the Pacific area on the USS Ticonderoga, an aircraft carrier, which was attacked by Japanese kamikaze aircraft, which crippled the ship. Gerry and Tom will describe their service and answer questions. Thank you.
So our first question is, how old were you guys when you were enlisted or drafted?
19 years old.
19 years, wow.
Tom, how old were you?
On my 17th birthday, I went to my father and said I want to go in the Navy, 1943.
And what was his reaction to that?
His reaction was, no, you finish high school. Well, I flunked everything next semester, and he decided that I wasn't going to graduate, I might as well go. So I was able to go in October, still 17.
That's crazy, that's pretty young to enlist in the military, in the Army. That's amazing.
I wouldn't recommend it now to you kids.
Why did you guys decide to enlist? What motivated you to enlist?
Say again, please.
You know, if Gerry doesn't hear you too well, there might be a little reason for that. He was just 100 years old the other day. So.
Happy birthday.
What motivated you to enlist?
We were attacked by an enemy, so we reacted.
We were anxious to get into the war because we were upset and angered. How dare they attack the United States like that, you know? You couldn't get into the post office to sign up. It was blocked, right? We were around the block trying to join up the fight.
I think it was a little bit of two things. One was a lot of, right in the middle of the war, it was a patriotic thing. But the other thing is I came from a poor family out in the country with 8 brothers and sisters. So I kind of wanted to change. I didn't know what I was getting into.
When I enlisted, I was assigned to the infantry. And after my basic training of 13 weeks of infantry training, I had a background of communications because one of my hobbies was Morse code. And I became very sharp with the Morse code. But during the training of the 13 weeks, instead of being assigned to an infantry division, they have several testing as you go into the service, and they found out how my background about communications, and they transferred me to a signal corps, and I took my training in signal in Camp Crowley, Missouri. But basically, I was always a ground soldier.
Pharmacist mate, second class. When I got out of boot camp, I asked to be in communications like Gerry was, but they decided they need some medical corpsmen, so they sent me to school in Norfolk, Virginia for 6 weeks.
An event? What was an event in the war that changed your life forever?
The question is, what event occurred in the war
Yes.
that changed my lifestyle.
Mhm.
No, forever. Change your life
Oh,
forever.
forever lifestyle. Well, that's several issues of this, to respond to that. You have to understand, when we entered the war, I'm going to use the word, for want of a purification. Because everybody, the men and boys in our time, we were kind of clean, so to speak, because we didn't know anything about fighting. Because the first thing you want to do in battle is to survive, is to alive. And the second thing you want to do after the battle is not to go into another battle, but progressively in the Pacific, as my veteran in arms knows, there was battle after battle after battle in the Pacific, because there's a different kind of a war in the Pacific as into the Europe. The Europe was a ground war. Once you got on the ground, you stayed there. In the Pacific, you were on one island. When you finished that island, you would return, and you got another island. You kept stepping stone all the way, all across the Pacific until the end of the war. But the attitudes that we developed, we became kind of hardened, because we faced the death, and we faced the I don't know. Pass this up to somebody else, would you please?
Tom?
Well, there's two things. One thing, after we were hit with the kamikazes coming out of the South China Sea around the Philippines, the next day the doctor on duty told me to go to the fantail and see what was going on there. And they were burying, we had 145 people killed that day. And I got to the fantail, and they had two scoops, they'd put the body on the scoop, they'd say a little prayer, and then they would let him slide into the ocean. And I could just think, those people are going to the bottom of the sea, and their parents will never see them again. And that kind of got me too, I'm sorry. And the other one was, in the summer of '45, the Defense Department told all the Marines on the ships that were in the Pacific they were going to be in the invasion of Japan, and they should start training for it. And since the Marines had no medical people attached, I don't know why, but the chief medical advisor picked me to go with the Marines to train for landing in Japan. And that was kind of an experience training with them, and we felt we would never come back. It's that simple.
You know, to sum it up, before the war, we were all kind of what you call puristic, just like you kids are right now. You didn't know anything about death. You didn't know anything about being hardened. You didn't know nothing about that. And as you served during the war, what you saw and what you did and what you experienced when you came out at the end of the war, we left a world that we knew at that time, and when we came back, that world that we knew did not exist. We got into a new world, and it was kind of strange to us, because when we got back home, things had changed during the interim of the war, and we didn't recognize our hometowns and whatnot the way it was before we left. So we were kind of strangers. And I remember before I left, I was in a group, a gang like you guys. You guys call it a gang, we call it a group. And we had a lot of dancing and whatnot, camaraderie. And when we got back, there was nobody left, because we didn't know who was left anymore. The neighborhood was a complete strange to us. So in my case, when I got back, it was December of 1945. and all through January of '46, I didn't know anybody in my neighborhood. It was all new, because what had happened was, during the war, people from all over the country came to this area, because this area had a defense plant called Wright Aeronautical. They were developing engines for the warplanes, and they were developing guns and artillery and whatnot. So they needed all these kind of people. They came in and they took over. So when we came back, we were strangers. So I got so disgusted, I couldn't find a friend. So I went to go back into the Army again. And I went back to the, this was now January. And I said to the officer, I want to go back into the service. I want to go back into the Army again. I said, I want to go back to the Pacific again, because there's nothing here that I know of. So, and I had 4 stripes, and he wanted me to go into the corporal, and I said, I can't do that. I said, I spent too many years getting these stripes. He said, well, we can't do that. You have to go in as a corporal. I walked out of his office. I went back to the Navy to join the Navy, and I joined the Navy. I signed up, and they gave me what they call a rating back, some of my stripes, and they would call me within 30 days. So I signed up. Now that was in January 1946. I'm still waiting to get called. It's a different world. See, you kids like where we were back in the late 30s, you're pure. You know, you haven't been tainted, you haven't been touched. Stay that way.
Your training for the war earlier. What was that like?
What?
You mentioned your training like earlier.
Military training?
Yes. What was that like?
Well, I took to it like duck to a water. When I was in high school in 1939, I think it was, there was a program by General MacArthur called the Citizens Military Training Program, because MacArthur had foresight to understand that one of our enemies was the Japanese. So he wanted to have a trained reserve corps, if you know what that is. So it was a 30-day program from the high school, and which I enlisted. It was just like joining in the regular Army. And I went down to Fort Dix, New Jersey, and I had 30 days of military training. So I became, as you know, hip to the service. You know, I knew what I was doing. So when the war broke out, I was automatically placed in the reserves. When the war broke out, I was working for the newspaper company at the time, and that was considered essential. And they couldn't, the draft couldn't touch me because I was in the Reserve Corps. And after about 6 months after that, they finally got so desperate for people, and they called me back in, and I went in at the time. That's how we got where I went back into the infantry again.
And how was your training, Mr. Jones?
Well, not too much training. We had boot camp, and then we had the hospital corps school in Norfolk for 6 weeks, and then I was assigned to a carrier, and while I was waiting, I was at a hospital near Washington, D.C.
Servicemen build tremendous relationships with other men in the service. They became good buddies. And unfortunately, you don't stay that way, because the government or the Army, the Navy, they transfer you from one group to another group, so you lose that particular friendship, and you got to initiate another friendship. And the only bad thing about that, if you get too close and your buddy gets killed or whatever, it's a tremendous shock in a way. That you lost somebody, but you got to pick up and keep going on. You can't stop about it. Yes, there was many, many good relationships, and to this day, matter of fact, the last one I had passed away last year. We had both left New Jersey in the March of 1942, I think it was, and in Newark Station. We stayed together for the whole war, the entire war. Him and I. It was a Jewish kid, Bernie Kaminsky, and he just passed away. And I have nobody left anymore. And when the government had built up the World War II Memorial in Washington, D.C., there was a facility there that you could write in your name and look up your other guys that were in the war, you know, that were with it. And I didn't get it, so I had a big sign made with my name, my company, and now this is there was almost 200,000 people at this facility, you know, during the memorial opening, and I went up and down every aisle with this sign with my name on it and telephone number. There were television cameras all over the place, and I didn't get a damn response, not one. And I was on NBC, CBS, Canadian television, French television, because I had this sign going up and down, you know, and I never got a response. And I finally said to one guy, "Christ, they can't all be dead. Somebody's got to be alive," but never got a response, you know. Yeah, we were very, very close, and I'm sure my patriot, my comrade over there had the same thing on board his ship. You develop a kinship between groups, and you have little groups together, just like brotherhood, you know. You and him would be buddies with him, so forth and so on, and you're very tight.
Just like you two would be pals.
And how was communication during the war? I know that probably was a big part of not being able to communicate with your family, maybe. How was that during the war?
Not bad. We got letters back and forth. They had a fleet post office, the Department of Defense, and they would forward the letters from home to us, and vice versa.
Letters from home was a shot in the arm, so to speak, away from the war, you know. And we welcomed letters. That mail call was something else. It was like getting a free beer, right? Yeah. Yeah, letters are very, very important part of our military life. Letters from home and from friends kept you going in the direst of times.
How was adapting back into normal life after leaving the war?
How was it when I came back after the war?
Yes.
One, it was very happiness. I was alive. I came back alive. And the other attitude that I had, it was disgusting because, like I mentioned before, there was nobody there. I had nobody. The neighborhood was gone. But it was very thankful that I had survived, and anything that was as difficult after I survived was a piece of cake. It didn't matter anymore because we went through things that nobody ever went through. So it was very easy. And what I did is I left New Jersey and went to California looking for work. And I met a friend, one of my buddies at the war there, got me a job in California. I worked with him in 1946, whatever. But it was the same thing there. People didn't know people. It was tough to get together. And I couldn't sustain myself in California because what they were paying me at that time, they were paying me $30 a week. And of course I didn't have a home, so I had to rent a room that was $15 a week. Food was $15 a week. So at the end of payday, I had nothing left. So I said to my boss, I can't handle this. I got to get back to New Jersey. Which they transferred me back, but I had to get back at my own expense to get back to my old neighborhood where I could get jobs, you know. And then I got whatever job that was available, you jumped in and worked. You had, you know, the thing that you learned from the war, if you came back, you were a survivor. You knew how to survive, okay? That was the key. I guess that's the only one I could explain it. Right, that was it. And if you had family, it was great. I didn't have much of a family. I was semi-orphaned as a kid, so I was kind of a free soul. So I bounced around all over the country for years. I don't know if that helps you out, but the best thing you can do, children, is to be very close to your family, develop a friendship, and embrace your friends, because you're going to go through the rest of your life with your friends, and they're going to help you and you're going to help each other.
I spent a lot of time at battle stations when we were, the ship was supporting an invasion or something like that. And I made a decision, I had a lot of time to think, that I was going to make my father proud of me, and I was going to, when I got home, I was going to go back to high school and finish. So I, back to high school, 6 of us veterans started that year of high school, only 2 of us graduated that year. But I still didn't have enough credits to get into, I wanted to go to the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy. And so I had to go back another year after I graduated to get enough credits to go there. But so I didn't have much time to do anything else but that. But it paid off, because I ended up, after quite a few years of working ashore, I was vice president in charge of, between 35 and 40 ships. Now, that's quite a responsibility too, because you never know what's going to happen to those ships. You might get a call in the middle of the night, and someone went aground, or they lost an engine, or stuck in the middle of the ocean. But it all paid off. So I'm very happy with what made my father happy.
If possible, would you have done anything differently in your life, whether it was like during the war or enlisting, any of that?
Well, one thing I would have done when the war started, instead of staying in the Army, I would have got into the Navy. At least they ate better than we did. You wouldn't have to be in the stinking foxhole or whatever, you know. That was my regret. Matter of fact, during one engagement between one island to another island, my unit was assigned into a carrier, the Bunker Hill, to transfer us to another island for another assault. And I'll tell you something, if you think the Navy had the best food in the world on that carrier, I'll tell you, you ate like kings. And I didn't want to leave. Then when we got to the point where we had to disembark, of course we got into the landing craft, LC, and of course we went through we left the carrier, but I have the warmest feeling and gratitude for the United States Navy. God bless them. They were great, especially on the carrier. And they helped us a lot when we were assaulting an island. They would try to soften up the beaches before we got there, so we killed as many Japanese as we could before we got there. And I'll never forget it. We got in this landing craft, and the intelligence officer, "It's a piece of cake, there's nobody left." And well, somebody was shooting the hell out of us, you know, because they didn't clean the house, but cleaning the beaches out. Yeah, the United States, that's what I would have done. I would have made a career out of the Navy had I enlisted in the Navy at that time. But I had an Army background, like I said before. When I was in high school, we went in town and got Army training at Fort Dix, and that training, of course, the government wouldn't let you get away with that. You know, you're a trained man, so they put you where you were best suited for the activity. But no, if I would have ended up being a good sailor.
Would you have done anything differently as well?
No, I often thought about that, but I was the only one in our family of 9 that finished, went to college, and finished college. I had a couple that I started and never finished. So if I hadn't went in the Navy and had time to think about my life and everything, would I have gone to college and finished and had a career I had? Maybe not. I would have done what most of my brothers and sisters did. I might have just gone out to high school and got a job, and they did very well, all of them, but I wanted to prove to my father that I could do it. So I don't think I'd have done anything differently, no. I was happy the way it went.
My first battle was in the Marshall Islands called Kwajalein, and I was assigned to go in with the second wave. When you attack an island, there's several waves. The first wave is to get get control of the beach. Then the second wave comes, they jump over that and go forward. You know, that's a. So I got associated with the 7th Infantry and 2nd Marine Division. Yeah, it was a combat group. So we took Kwajalein. I was there 3 days. They pulled me from Kwajalein, and they put me on board ship again, and we went further down into you know what an atoll is? An atoll is a group of islands. See, there may be 15 islands in this one atoll. Then there's another atoll, maybe 500 miles down the other beach, as another atoll. So the first atoll was Kwajalein, and the second one was Eniwetok. So they sent me down to Eniwetok, and we took that island, and I was there a couple of months, and from there they pulled me out of the line and sent me back to Pearl Harbor because radio operators were very short in those days. See, all the equipment, 75% of the equipment and manpower went to Europe. We got 25%. Because Europe, because the President of the United States and Churchill and whatnot thought that Hitler was the prime enemy to clean that up before the Pacific War. So the Pacific War was secondary in logistics, manpower, whatever. Make a long story short, I got back in there and they signed me to another outfit, and we went into Saipan. So that's another route. There was Saipan, Guam. What the hell is the other one? Saipan, Guam, and I can't think of the other one. So we took Saipan, and back again. I went back to Pearl again, and then we went down to another atoll, and that's all what we were doing. We were island hopping all the way down. And in 1945, General MacArthur was going to attack the Philippines. And I was on an island group to protect his right flank so the enemy wouldn't attack him. They pulled me back from there and they sent me back to Saipan. And now this is 1945, in May of 1945. And I got into a signal company, an assault signal company, and we were assigned to the 1st Marine Division. And we were going to attack Japan. So we were training on Saipan in May, June, July, and August for the attack on Japan. And we had hundreds and thousands of men on all the islands and whatnot to regroup for the assault. And as luck would have it, they dropped the A-bomb, and that kind of saved our lives, to tell you the truth. Because I wouldn't be here now, and I don't think my brother in arms would be here either if we had attacked the Japanese.
We committed ourselves that would landing in Japan would be the end. But we weren't worried about ourselves. I got very close to 2 Marines on the ship, and we felt that we would never go back. But what bothered us mostly, our family wouldn't see us again, and we were worried how they would get along, feel about it, you know. But is some experience. But the A-bomb saved us.
It's difficult for you people to understand this thing, and I apologize to you to try and get you some sort of a picture of what went on during the war. My advice to you in this world situation is be acute of what's going on in your world, because it's your world now. And you're the guys that's going to have to fight the damn thing. So get involved and try to help your country the best way you can. You vote for who you think is going to do the best for your country. Always respect the flag. That's your liberty. When that goes down, it's all over. There's not. We can't fight for you anymore. We're too old, you know. Not that we want to go back, but anyway, always be in your heart. Be American. Be patriotic. Don't go nuts overboard. Just be good, patriotic. Be good to each other. Help each other. It's the best thing I can tell you. Pay attention in school. Because we need you, we need your brains. We need you are now our vanguard. We'll follow you, okay? That's the best I can tell you, I guess.
And then let's give him one more round of applause.